I made a full-time decision. I put it out there with some media outlets. I went from 45 authors to almost 82 by November.
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Mickey Mikkelson here, all the way from Alberta, Canada. Mickey, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure to be on, and thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm super excited. Admittedly, I don't know very much about publicists. My understanding is somewhere across between a marketing person and a PR person for a person, as opposed to like a company. So I'm going to have to ask you, what is it like being a publicist?
It's something that I would never thought myself ever doing. The opportunity fell in my lap, and it's ironic because I've represented companies from a media standpoint. I represent over 100 authors right now. I represent some musicians. Two of them are actors as well as writers. It just branches off into all these different areas. And I get to wear different hats every day and just talk about opportunities. It's amazing.
Think about one particular person you're representing. What's a typical day like when you're working for them? What kinds of things are you helping that person do?
Basically, I'm writing out press releases. I'm pitching individual emails. I don't use newswires when I'm reaching out. So for a book launch, I'm usually sending out between 400 and 450 different emails individually, because I want to categorize and have those emails individual to the people I'm sending those opportunities to. So that's one aspect. We're trying to get interviews nationwide, North America wide, actually internationally wide. So there's a lot of different things that have to happen within this. We're getting book reviews, we're getting podcast interviews, TV, radio, shows like yours, all kinds of different things are happening all the time.
You talked before, you said, this kind of fell in your lap. Let's talk about that. How did you get started doing this?
I was working in the credit union sector in a corporate position. I was on the road 6 days a week. I was going to credit unions, teaching lenders how to sell insurance for loans. One of my coworkers wrote a book. And prior to us working together, I used to work for the largest book chain in Canada, Chapters, as a special events person. So I made my boasting to this individual. Her name is Miranda O, by the way. She's out of Winnipeg. I said, Miranda, I can help you market your book. What do you think? Well, we were together in Alberta, ideally, and we got her 8 signings in Alberta. Then we got her 4 more signings in Winnipeg. Neither of us knowing what we're doing. We're going to these stores. We're doing these book signings. We're talking to people. We're trying to sell these books. And next thing you know, I'm getting contacted by a lot of the authors that I used to work with when I was at Chapters, saying, Mickey, we heard about Miranda. Can you do the same thing for me? That probably happened 5 times before I set up my little company. And that was in March of 2016. By August of that year, I'd signed 35 clients, not knowing anything about marketing, not having a single media outlet, nothing. And now, almost 8 years later, while we have a client base of over 100 authors, some musicians, we represent New York Times bestsellers, we represent USA Today bestsellers. I've got a business affiliate who's an award-winning social media outlet out of Texas. It's been incredible.
Wow. So I love that you said that you started your words, little company, and you knew nothing about marketing. So that leads me to this next question. Let's talk about your education and how that has either helped, hindered, or had no effect.
I do have a marketing diploma from NAIT, which is the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, but it was more sales focused and more about presentations and more about how to talk to people. It wasn't about media outlets or anything like that. So I knew nothing about publicity, like nothing, to be honest.
So you started out with your authors, and you said by the end of the first year, I think you said you had 35, is that correct?
Around there, yeah.
Okay, and how did you make the jump to then you said you had two musicians, I think either during our conversation now or before I started recording, you said you had a couple of actors, I think. How did that all come together? Was that all word of mouth, or are you just trying to expand into those realms?
Almost every client that I've gotten has been through referrals, media referrals, client referrals, doing shows like yours where I've gotten myself out there. Pretty much everybody that we've signed, I think for the exception of maybe 4 or 5, have been through the referral business. And we start with writers. Every one of those authors are a musician that are musicians and actors as well. So it all starts with the books. I've got a Bram Stoker Award winner. He's also been an actor. He's actually going on a set next week for something I can't talk about, but that's part of it. I have another author who's a Grammy considered musician as well, and another author who's a best-selling saxophonist. So it all stems from the books, and then we just go from there. Yeah.
When you're working with these authors, I've spoken to a fair number of authors on my program here, and a number of them are self-published. We had a couple that went through the traditional publisher route, but also we have a fair amount that are self-published. Do you specifically work with people that go down the traditional published route, or do you do self-published as well? How does that work out for you?
We actually started working with the self-published authors as well. We love indies. I love working with indies. They're just so talented and so amazing, and it's an overlooked basis, and they should get more accolades. That's my opinion.
Okay.
We work with both indies and traditional authors overall. So those traditional authors also have in-house publicists that are working within that. But there's a golden fast rule that if the book promotion is done 3-4 months, their in-house publicists are usually done and going on to different things. Whereas I've been effective in promoting books a year down the road, a year and a half down the road, all of that. So we're able to still do stuff. And that's where the charm is, I think, because I've had a lot of clients who are traditionally published as well as self-published who've been with me for a number of years.
If someone comes to you and they're a self-published author, and maybe they've only written one book, this is their first book, and they're looking for a publicist, how difficult is for them or you to get them exposure, them being so new? Is it not difficult because you have, your name, your connections? How does that work out?
I'm glad you asked this question, actually. It's a combination of different things. So for a debut author, in fact, almost all of our clients, our focus is to build out that author branding. We want to create the name recognition. So in my opinion, and this might be a negative opinion, but I've proven it, social media is there to leverage the book. Amazon ads, BookBub ads, 99-cent sales, all that, it's out there to leverage the book. Traditional media is there to leverage the individual. So when we're pitching, we're actually focusing on the branding of the person and not the current book that they're writing today. And that's the spin that we take. If I meet with a debut author and they say to me, Mickey, I want to work with you, but I want the New York Times, I want Oprah, I want the Washington Post, and I want NPR. Well, I'm likely not going to sign that individual because their expectations are too high. What I want to do is set up building blocks, get them on small opportunities, graduate to medium opportunities, and then ultimately large opportunities. Now that might take one book or it might take 3 books. But what we're actually doing is building out that individual's media resume. And with the more opportunities they get, the more well-known they're going to get. And if they have a lot of opportunities, there's a really good chance that larger media outlets are going to want to talk to them because they're starting to build a profile.
At what point is it better time for them to approach someone like you specifically, I guess, after they've written their first book or after they've already written like 3 or 4 and now they need like help from a publicist? Is it better to kind of build that brand right from the beginning or take kind of what they already have and they've cultivated and refine that and help them out? How does that work?
In a perfect world, I would prefer to have them start at the beginning, but I want the book, to me, 3 to 4 to 6 months before release date, because I want to be able to get those editorial reviews. And if you're looking at places like Publishers Weekly or Library Journal, if they haven't got the book 3 to 4 months in advance, if we're trying to get it to them and it's a month before launch date, they're not even going to cover it. So the focus is try to get some editorial reviews first and then build up that base from there. So if there's a debut author who really wants to work with a publicist, they need to start early if they want to have the main success.
How important is it for you to have specific connections to different media outlets? So if I want to start my own business as a publicist, I don't know any people directly as far as like the media outlets are concerned. Is me just saying like, hi, I'm a publicist for XYZ. I'm trying to get them some exposure for their book or whatever. Does that carry? Is that going to get me very far, or do you have to kind of really start out small and kind of like build up your network so you can get these people out there?
You have to start small and build your network up. It took me a good couple of years to get where I'm at this point. I mean, at this point, I still have to pitch, obviously, to the major areas like the New York Post or the New York Times, but I have a set number of media relationships where I'm not really pitching as much. I've built my reputation, and we have media connections that know the kind of authors we're bringing forward to them, so they'll typically just cover them with a conversation. But it does take time to do that, and you're going to hear a lot of no's. You're going to hear a lot of no's, and I'll be honest, I've been really, really lucky as well, because I've been able to work with some very established and top people, and that's helped me build my brand out.
When you're working with a new author, you sign. I'm assuming they're under some kind of contract with you.
They are.
When it comes to them paying you, is it like an upfront cost? Is it a monthly cost while they're using their services? Does it come out of points from the book sales? What does that typically look like?
The authors, and I don't know how other publicists do this. I hear there's different veins and different aspects. The majority of my clients pay me based on the level of opportunities that they get. My contracts are done up a year at a time. The auto renew at the end of that year. Cancellation can be done in writing at any time within that span time or afterwards. But my invoices are done monthly, usually on the 28th of every single month. And it's based on the opportunities that they have. So for some authors, there is a fixed rate of pay that they pay every single month, knowing that there's going to be some gaps where there's less opportunities, and then there's going to be months where there's more opportunities. But then there's other authors who will only pay me based on what I get them every single month. If I don't get them anything in a month, they don't pay me anything for that month.
So one thing I'd like to do is discuss if someone is trying to transition from one career to another. So if someone is looking to exit their career and maybe they decide they want to be a publicist, what are some really good skills that they might be able to leverage, hypothetically, that could take them into this career?
It really depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, when I got into this, again, I was working in the corporate sector, and I still did for about 3 years after that. Creative Edge was a side job for the first 3 years, part-time. For the first 6 months, I didn't take a dime from any of my clients because I didn't want to charge them for something if they weren't going to get value back and whether or not I was going to be effective. I started charging probably about the 6-month mark and onwards because we'd already started establishing some media relationships and things like that. But did I make mistakes? Oh yeah, I made tons of mistakes. And thank you to the people, if they're listening, thank you to the people who allowed me to leverage their brands to build this out, because I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for them, to be honest. So, I mean, in terms of advice, you have to have passion for whatever you're doing, whether it's publicity, whether it's engineering, whether you want to be a math major, or a firefighter, whatever you want to do, have passion and understand there's going to be mistakes along the way, and don't let those mistakes defeat you. That's my opinion.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah, it's true though.
So let's talk about you when you first started your business. You said you were kind of doing it on the side originally, and I like to ask this question a lot because I like hearing people's stories about this. So invariably, you're starting your own business, and you come to a crossroad, and it's do I give up on my dream and continue working my regular job, or do I give up my comfortable lifestyle, this guaranteed income, to pursue this dream that I'm hoping will go to the next level? What was that like for you, transitioning from working to really taking off with your own business?
It was scary, and for a few reasons. So for the first 3 years of Creative Edge, I was working in the corporate sector. I was on the road like pretty much every day. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning, and I would work on my business from 4:30 to 8:30. Then I would do my day job for 8 hours. Or if I'm on the road, who knows how long. At nights in hotels or at home, I would be then pitching my people to media outlets and things like that. And I did that 5, 6 days a week. So within the corporate sector, there was a merger of my company, and they let a number of people, they eliminated a number of people's positions. I was one of those. And so I made a decision. I had to make a decision. Do I try and do this full time and see if I can make it fly? Or do I go and get another position within my field? Because I had some job offers. I decided to make this full time and see where we're at. And so we went, and that was in September of 2020. At the time, we probably had about 45 authors represented. I made a full-time decision. I put it out there with some media outlets. I went from 45 authors to over almost 82 by November. And now we're over 100. So the experiment worked, but it was scary. And, but would I change it? No.
So your timeline made me think of this. How much of the exposure for your artists, how much of that is virtual versus in person? I'm assuming around the COVID era, all of that was probably mostly virtual. But what is it like now? Is it still that way? Is it a mix? What does that look like?
It's mostly still virtual. And actually COVID, I mean, it was not a great thing, obviously, but we were busy during COVID. I mean, media were looking for content around that time because it was all dark and gloomy and the disease, right? So they wanted some fresh outlooks. But because of where I am, because I'm in Canada, in a small town, actually, people call me, they think I'm in New York, and I'm not. It's crazy. But I would say 75% of the opportunities we get are virtual or by phone.
So, Mickey, this is the part of the show where I do like to throw a surprise question at my guest. Has nothing to do with what you do for a living. And ironically, it kind of hinges on something we just talked about. So this is kind of fun and ironic. So as most of us found ourselves limited in where we could go circa 2020, a lot of people took to new hobbies. They read more books or discovered new shows to watch. During the time that followed, things got very hard for people and sometimes very, very real. On the opposite side of the spectrum, some things were okay, even good or great for others. So during all of that time where we had our limitations, what is one good or great thing that came out of it for you?
I was able to build my business up more. It was not a great time for people overall, and I never want to wish that on the world, for especially those who got contracted with COVID. But we were busy, and that disease opened up a lot of doors for my clients. In fact, one of my authors wrote a book about a pandemic as a result of deer prion disease. And her name's Tosca Lee. She's a multiple New York Times bestseller. She pretty much predicted everything that was going to happen, that did happen, in her book. And that was, I think it was written in January 2018. And then, well, COVID all happened, and everything she said in the book, it all happened. From like airlines shutting down to people going to get like toilet paper because there was shortages, all of that happened. So for me, from that aspect, it was a good thing, but I would never wish that on anybody, to be honest.
It's interesting. The surprise questions, I have a list of maybe about a dozen or so questions. And I just, whoever's my next whoever's my next Zoom call, they get the next question. That's just how it goes. So it's funny, that we were kind of talking about that already and your business kind of boomed. And then, that's kind of the question that came at you. Mickey, one other thing I like to do when I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity to talk about a cause they believe in, a project they're working on, a business. So if there's something that you'd like to discuss, I'd like to give you the floor for a few minutes.
My daughter, well, now considered a son, he's trans, is autistic. And when I started this company, he designed the logo behind me with the blue puzzle piece and the white puzzle piece, all about connection. And we wanted to make the one blue puzzle piece autism because that is near and dear to my heart. And it's just something that we're always advocates for, is autism. I know it's Pride Month right now. We're advocating for that. and just one of those things that, build it up, believe in everybody, have equality, and just provide support overall for everybody. Because we're all different, but we all deserve to have what we want to do in our lives.
Mickey, I absolutely love that. I love that. One of the very, very early episodes, I spoke with Christina. She's a speech pathologist.
Okay.
And we were talking about, I posed the same, I gave her the same opportunity at the end of the segment. And she talked about kids, and if your child needs help, get them help, whatever that looks like for a particular child. And that resonated with me a lot, because, you want children to succeed. You want to give them the tools that they need to succeed, or even your friends. You want to make sure they succeed too, and family, you want them to succeed. So I love that. I love what you're saying about, equality and equity. I absolutely love that. So I thank you for mentioning that to us today.
Oh, of course, absolutely. It's like some people say, I tell them that my kid's autistic, and they're like, they don't look autistic. And my response is, oh, what does autism look like? Like, no one knows, right? So that's just something that we're always going to advocate for.
Mickey, it's been absolutely awesome having you on Time We Discuss, and we got to talk to you about what it's like to be a publicist.
Thank you so much for having me. This was incredibly just wonderful. I appreciate it.